Good morning, y'all. How y'all doing? And I gotta say, it's definitely a good morning, specifically for me. And I just, not so much that I'm one to toot my own horn or anything like that, but I feel like I love when people come to realize when I'm actually right about a lot of these things. And yes, I'm admitting to being a bit full of myself here, but here's the deal. I think I've been talking about this for quite some time now, right? I mean, if for those of you that have actually been watching, yeah, I've been saying this literally for what I feel like has to have been the past couple of years now. I really do feel like Jaylon Brown is the best player on the Boston Celtics, and if nothing else, I feel like last night actually proved it. And he's come through with a huge chip on his shoulder, and this is even further being acknowledged on ESPN's First Take, specifically by Kendrick Perkins. Shout out to Big KP, Big Perk. But it's just really interesting that we're finally at this point now, to where national media is acknowledging this. And again, I don't mean to be full of myself so much so to where, I feel like they heard this from me low-key or anything like that, because I don't find that to be very, very likely, number one. Number two, and more importantly, it's just more the fact that, again, it's being acknowledged for what it is, and I think the evidence has largely been there, I think, since I believe it was the 2022 finals when the Warriors beat the Celtics, and literally the only one I saw from the Celtics was Jaylon Brown. I didn't see so much of Jason Tatum. It was even more than Jaylon Brown, really Steph Curry owning that series, as he was the finals MVP. So with all that being the case, I think it's important to acknowledge at this point, well, here, let's actually do this. Let's look back even further than that. Pretty much the emergence of Jason Tatum, which what a lot of people tend to forget about with that is that happened upon Jaylon Brown suffering an injury that actually derailed him significantly, and when he came back that season, and especially for those playoffs, he wasn't quite the same Jaylon Brown at that point. But Tatum definitely emerged, and that's where a lot of people were thinking he was the guy, and, I was like, okay, let's see where this goes, I just wasn't really sure where it was going at that point, but now I kind of really have to question that a bit more because, again, it's being acknowledged now, and like I said, I've been saying it for the last couple years, but regardless of whether I've been saying it or not, we need to just acknowledge the fact that he's proven it. I mean, hell, they showed his press conference where he actually talked about it because they asked him about that, Does it basically bother you? And of course, I'm paraphrasing. They asked him, does it bother you that, you didn't make All NBA or whatever? And he's like, no. And the way he replied was simply the greatest response you could ever give to a question like that. And I don't think enough dudes have said this enough, but he put it point blank, period. I don't have time for that shit. Just, I love that. I love that for everything that it is. And I say that simply for the fact that, and I gotta go back to Big Perk on this one. Man is standing on business, for real. I mean, that's literally what it is. He's standing on business. He's on a mission. And until that mission has been completed, all else doesn't matter. And that's literally the way that it should be. Now, on a note of how things should be, or at least the way that they shouldn't be, we gotta really talk about this particular issue here, because this does get brought up, but I don't know if it's being looked at the way that it should be. But of course I got this here. Obviously Charles Barkley has talked about it, and he's actually right about this, especially with the air bubble quote thing that's whatever you want to call it that's phased in. It ain't their fault, you know. And I think about that, and I'm going to go into another name here that most recently got the axe here, but these two in particular I want to talk about because I said before, and I've actually said it in a recent video, actually, you know, that I felt like Darvin Ham should be the NBA Mike Tomlin because, you know, and oddly enough, there's the commonality between the Lakers and the Steelers as being, you know, amongst, if not the most illustrious franchise in their respective sports, and maybe even all of sports for that matter. But even for all of that being the case, you know, you've got a guy like Mike Tomlin that's been around with the Steelers, is still there now, and has been for the better part of, I want to say, at least 13 years now. I may be off on that number, so don't hold me to that. But it's certainly remarkable what he's actually been able to accomplish, and it's just sad that that's not being duplicated in the NBA. And I thought this was a perfect opportunity for that to be the case, especially for such a front-running franchise as the Los Angeles Lakers. To whereas with Frank Vogel, who ironically enough was the coach that won him the championship, albeit in the bubble, you know, he got dismissed almost as unceremoniously. I mean, it's just really, really wild. It's weird for so many different reasons, especially now with the Suns having moved on to Mike Budenholzer. I mean, I just hope that he's treated better than either of these two have been. And on top of that, I hope he's certainly treated a lot better than this man. I mean, J.B. Bickerstaff just having been fired, I believe it was yesterday or maybe even the day before, from the Cleveland Cavaliers. And apparently that has a lot to do with Donovan Mitchell sticking around in Cleveland, although Donovan Mitchell has gone on record to say he is happy in Cleveland. Now, whether or not he's actually being particularly honest with that statement when he says that, you know, I'm not even going to try to judge that. That's not for me to speak on. Honestly, I couldn't care less. I mean, for all we know, by the end of next season, he could say probably end up, I don't know, with the Miami Heat, just spitballing it, so to speak, you know. I mean, anything's possible with that sort of thing. I just feel like that's literally where we're at with this, because we got the same thing with Kyrie Irving, interestingly enough, which I definitely have to talk about that in a different video, but, I mean, why are we doing this like it matters? That's the thing I've never understood about this from NBA franchises, and it's been more and more of a thing in recent years. It's honestly disturbing at this point, you know, and it's just amazing because if not for the stars, I would think this is the kind of thing that would make the game a little bit unwatchable. But at the same time, teams like the Celtics, who went on from Ime Udoka to Joe Mazzulla, are still thriving. Again, we just talked about it. And Jaylon Brown said it himself. They're literally 2 games away from the NBA Finals. So, I mean, maybe there is something to that. But, you know, we're really going to see what there really is with Ime Udoka now in Houston with, interestingly enough, another Jalen of his own in Jalen Green. It's just they switched colors on that. Anyway, that's a bad pun on my part. I apologize on that. But anyway, you know, it's just wild that this is a thing the way that it is, because I don't think that it's really been good for any of the franchises. I mean, look at the Warriors that I mentioned earlier, you know. They still have Steve Kerr there. I mean, they just won a championship a couple of years ago. I mean, somebody's got to help me with what I'm missing on that one. But we're going to move on to what has to be the highlight of the hour right now, because, man, I mean, for something that's been much talked about for a long time, I don't know that it gets more talked about than the NCAA. Man. So, developing story came out yesterday, really last night at about 7:34 Eastern time. It would have been 5:34 here, but I'm just going to read the article here a little bit. The NCAA and its 5 power conferences have agreed to allow schools to directly pay players for the first time in the 100-plus year history of college sports. The NCAA and its leagues are moving forward with a multi-billion-dollar agreement to settle 3 pending federal antitrust cases. The NCAA will pay more than $2.7 billion in damages over 10 years to past and current athletes, sources told ESPN. Sources said that parties also have agreed to a revenue-sharing plan allowing each school to share up to roughly $20 million per year with its athletes. Wow. Wow. I mean, I'm just wrapping my head around that here real quick, because this is actually the first time I've actually read that to any extent. I'm going to read the whole thing at some point here before too long, but just navigating off of that. And they also talked about this on First Take as well. They had Jay Williams and Paul Feinbaum on there with Stephen A. Smith to discuss this subject. I mean, I don't know any other way to look at it at this point, you know. I feel like this is something that's been long overdue for quite some time. And something else that wasn't mentioned about this is it's going to be interesting to see what comes of this for NIL. I mean, I think that's gotta be a question that has to be answered at this point, because now we gotta be at a point where, I mean, how much of a factor is that in this? Are they even more of a factor, or are they less? I mean, it just seems like, at least to some degree, the end goal has been accomplished here. I mean, I'm not really sure where this is going, because sadly, this is only 3 cases that we're talking about here. I mean, amongst so many others. And I don't know, it's just wild to think about this, but I don't know. It's just really, really wild to think about, because literally 10 years ago, especially before the Ed O'Bannon case, I'm not sure if we were ever going to be getting to this point, because, I mean, the NCAA just had such a struggle, or just a stranglehold on all of this, that it didn't seem like it was ever going to matter. I mean, but now with NIL, and of course with this now, it's going to be really interesting to see where all of this goes from here. I mean, man, I gotta say, this has already been an interesting time, and funny enough, I did a video the other day talking about NCAA football coming back. And I'm pretty confident we're going to get NCAA basketball back in video game form at some point as well. But man, I gotta say, this is really interesting. And going back just real quick to the whole NCAA football game thing, I do believe, as I understand it, there is going to be an ultimate team. I mean, I don't know that that's been fully revealed or anything, but I would anticipate that's going to be the case. And for those that know Ultimate Team for what it is, especially with Mutt on Madden, I mean, this is actually pretty huge. This is huge for a variety of reasons. I mean, not even just this, but man, y'all know what it is. Let me know what y'all think. Like, share, subscribe if y'all are new. I mean, man, I'm gonna just leave it at thanks for rocking with me on this one, because, man, it's obviously it's only gonna get better from here. Right on, y'all.